Uh, Usually, when world events happen, it takes a lot of, it sets a lot of people off on having a lot of anxiety because all the news sources have different kind of perspectives. So I was asking Gemini, can you summarize why Trump captured Maduro and his wife? Is it legal to do this according to international law? On January 3rd, 2026, the U.S. government under the Trump administration carried out a large-scale military operation in Venezuela that resulted in the capture of President Nicolas Maduro and his wife Cecilia Flores. The following summary outlines the reasons provided for this action and the ongoing debate regarding its legality under international law. Why were Maduro and his wife captured? The operation is described by the Trump administration as a mission to bring outlaw dictator Nicolas Maduro to justice. The primary reasons cited include narco-terrorism indictments. The U.S. Department of Justice released an indictment charging Maduro and his wife with leading a corrupt government that leveraged state power to protect narco-terrorist organizations. Specifically, the U.S. alleges they partnered with Cartel de los Solos to traffic as much as 250 tons of cocaine into the United States. National security and law enforcement. President Trump said that Maduro and his had long threatened American citizens, and that the capture was necessary to end drug trafficking and narco-terrorism originating from Venezuela. Return of resources. Vice President J.D. Vance noted that the operation followed months of off-ramps offered to the regime, emphasizing that Maduro failed to stop drug trafficking and returned stolen oil to the United States. Human rights and democracy. Administration officials described Maduro as a tyrant whose removal marked a new dawn for the Venezuelan people, ending decades of authoritarian rule. Is it legal under international law? The legality of the operation is subject to intense global debate, with many experts and international bodies raising serious concerns. Arguments against legality, violations of sovereignty. The United Nations and several countries, including France and Russia, have condemned the strike as a violation of international law. UN spokesperson Stefan Dujarric stated the action constitutes a dangerous precedent for targeting a sitting head of state. The UN Charter critics argue that unilateral military intervention to remove a foreign leader violates the UN Charter, which generally prohibits the use of force against the territorial integrity of political independence of any state, except in the case of self-defense or with Security Council authorization. Domestic legal concerns. Within the U.S., several Democratic lawmakers have labeled the strikes illegal, including that President Trump bypassed the constitutional requirements by launching a large-scale military operation without authorization from Congress. Arguments for legality. The U.S. position. Extraterritorial jurisdiction. The administration relies on the principle that the U.S. has the right to apprehend individuals indicted for major crimes against the citizens, such as narco-terrorism and drug trafficking, even beyond its borders. Non-recognition of government. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio argued that Maduro was not the legitimate president of Venezuela, but rather the head of a criminal organization, potentially affecting his claim to sovereign immunity. 1989 precedent. Reports suggest that administration may have utilized legal memorandums similar to those used during the 1989 invasion of Panama to capture Miguel Noriega, which argue that the president's domestic constitutional authority can, in certain circumstances, override constraints of international treaties. Maduro and his wife are currently being transported to New York, where they are expected to face trial in the Southern District of New York next week. I asked, what's the reaction of other countries. The capture of Nicolas Maduro and Cecilia Flores on January 3rd, 2026 has shockwaves through the global community, sparking a polarized split between countries celebrating the end of a dictatorship and those decrying a violation of international law. Here is the intelligence map of how the world is reacting. The outraged neighbors, Latin America. Most of the region is deeply alarmed by the return of unilateral U.S. military intervention, often referred to as big stick diplomacy. Brazil, President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva called the operation a serious affront to sovereignty and warned that the U.S. has crossed an unacceptable line that threatens the peace of the entire region. Colombia, President Gustavo Petro described the capture as an assault on Latin America's sovereignty, warned of a massive humanitarian and migration crisis at the border. Mexico, the Mexican government strongly condemned unilateral action, stating it jeopardizes regional stability. Cuba, President Miguel Diaz-Canel labeled it as a criminal attack and state terrorism, calling for an urgent global response. The supporters and celebrators, Argentina, President Javier Milei was among the first to celebrate, calling the capture excellent news for the cause of freedom in the Americas. Ukraine and Kosovo both narrates. I'm sorry, that just reminded me of Mr. Burns from The Simpsons. Ukraine and Kosovo, both nations have issued statements standing firmly with Washington, viewing the move as a necessary action against the authoritarian ally of Russia. Venezuelan exile celebrations have broken out in Miami, Madrid, and Santiago, Chile, among the diaspora, who view this as the only way Maduro would ever leave power. The global superpowers. Russia, the Kremlin is furious, calling the strike an act of armed aggression. Russia is particularly concerned because Maduro is a key strategic ally, and they have called for an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council. China, Beijing expressed it was deeply shocked and condemned the hegemonic acts of the U.S., urging respect of the UN Charter and Venezuela's sovereignty. Iran, as a close partner of Maduro, Iran condemned the flagrant violation of territorial integrity and untenable pretext used by the U.S. The middle ground, EU and UN. The United Nations Security General Antonio Guterres is deeply alarmed, stating that targeting a sitting head of state is a dangerous precedent in the international relations. European Union top diplomat Kaja Kallas took a nuanced path. She reiterated that the U.S. does not recognize Maduro's legitimacy, but emphasizes that under all circumstances, the principle of international law and the UN Charter must be respected. Spain, Madrid has offered to act as a mediator to find a peaceful negotiated transition, emphasizing that they are currently sheltering the opposition leader, Edmundo González Urrutia. Summary table of global stance. Key countries, entities, primary argument. Condemnation is Russia, China, Brazil, Mexico, Cuba, and Iran. The violation of sovereignty and international law. Support, Argentina, Ukraine, U.S. Trump administration. Removal of narco-terroristic dictator as moral necessity. Caution, EU, UN, Spain, and UK. Maduro is illegitimate, but the method used is legally dangerous. Okay. The military genius takeaway. You've noticed pattern. This is more, I guess, for me, so. What do the Venezuelans think? The situation in Venezuela right now, the morning of Saturday, January 3rd, 2026, is extremely chaotic and deeply polarized because the capture happened only a few hours ago, around 4:30 a.m. Eastern. The country is currently in a state of shock and stark polarization. Here's the breakdown of what people on the ground are thinking and doing. the opposition, a new dawn. For those who have spent years protesting the Maduro regime, there is a sense of cautious jubilation mixed with immediate political action. Maria Corina Machado from exile, she released a powerful letter stating, "What had to happen is happening." She is calling for Edmundo Gonzalez, the candidate the opposition claims won the 2024 election, to be sworn in immediately. Spontaneous celebrations have been reported in parts of Caracas and among the diaspora in cities like Santiago de Chile, where people are waving flags and honking horns. Negotiated exit rumors. Some opposition sources are whispering to international media that they suspect this might have been a negotiated exit, disguised as a raid, though there is no official proof of this yet. I would hope that would be. I think Trump is very good at acting and can do something like that, but as far as the beginning of this, with blowing up ships with people on it and then displaying that to the world, I think this is definitely a rumor. The Chavistas, the government loyalists, imperialist aggression. The ruling party, PSCV, is calling the capture of kidnapping and is trying to mobilize their base. Calls to the streets. Vice President Delcy Rodriguez and Caracas Mayor Carmen Melendez have urged supporters to take to the streets. Mayor Melendez was seen leading a crowd chanting, "Maduro, hold on, the people are rising up." The collectivos, armed civilian militias loyal to Maduro, have been deploying in their traditional strongholds in Caracas, which is causing fear of potential street-to-street fighting. The proof of life demand. Government officials are repeatedly using state TV to demand proof of life for Maduro and Cecilia Flores, trying to frame the U.S. as lawless kidnappers. Trump did release a photo of them on the USS Iwo Jima. The general public scared and silent. Outside of the political activists, the average person in Caracas is living through a nightmare of uncertainty. Fear of war. Residents reported hearing at least 7 massive explosions and seeing low-flying aircraft. Many woke up terrified that a full-scale war has started. Blackouts. Part of southern Caracas have lost power, making it hard for people to get news or check on family. Silent streets. In many middle-class neighborhoods, the streets are eerily empty. People are sheltering in place and watching their phones, terrified of what happens when the sun goes down tonight. The military, the wild card. This is the group everyone is watching. Defense Minister Vladimir Pedrino Lopez is calling the U.S. action an illegal invasion and vowed to fight. However, there haven't been reports of large-scale military retaliation against U.S. assets yet. Some experts believe the military may be in a wait-and-see mode for that, or that parts of the high command may have known about the raid. The current atmosphere in Caracas. Zone, feeling, and activity. Opposition strongholds are hopeful and celebratory, flag-waving social media posts. Government strongholds are angry and defiant. Militia deployment, Maduro chants. Neutral neighborhoods are terrified, stockpiling food and staying indoors. Border zones are panicked, the influx of people trying to cross into Colombia. And then Gemini wants to find out if there have been any reports of the Venezuelan military actually firing back at the U.S. ships in the Caribbean this morning. Today, January 3rd, 2026, the reaction in Venezuela is a mix of terror, chaos, and a complete breakdown of normal life. While the U.S. celebrates a brilliant operation, the ground in Venezuela feels like a war zone. The military reaction, armed struggle. Despite Maduro being gone, the Venezuelan military, Fan B, is not backing down yet. The indestructible wall. Defense Minister Vladimir Pedrino Lopez appeared in a defiant video accusing the U.S. of desecrating sacred land. He hasn't surrendered. Instead, he has offered the military to immediately transition to armed struggle. Damage assessment. The military is currently reeling from strikes on Fuerte Tiuna, the main military complex, and La Carlota Air Base. They're aiming at the U.S. helicopters. They're claiming that the U.S. helicopters fired missiles into urban areas and they are still counting the dead. The Caribbean front, while there are no confirmed reports of the Venezuelan Navy sinking U.S. ships, the military has vowed to resist any foreign boots on the ground. The civilian underworld panic in the streets. For the 31 million people in Venezuela, the air quality today isn't just about formaldehyde, it's about smoke and gunpowder. The explosions at 2 a.m., residents in Caracas woke up to at least 7 massive explosions that shook the ground. Many are hiding in their homes, following shelter-in-place orders. Social chaos. Maduro's Vice President Delcy Rodriguez is calling for a mass mobilization. Pro-government militias, collectivos, are reportedly moving into downtown Caracas, while opposition supporters are trying to celebrate cautiously, without getting caught in the crossfire. The blackout. Much of southern Caracas has lost power, cutting people off from information, which always increases panic. The day after power vacuum. There is a massive who's in charge problem right now. The U.S. stance. President Trump stated, "We are going to run the country until a safe and proper transition can happen." This has triggered colonial war fears among many locals. The opposition. Maria Corina Machado is pushing for a transition to the opposition-led mandate, but with the U.S. saying they will run things, even some of Maduro's critics are worried about becoming a U.S. colony. Venezuela vital signs. Sector status and current activity. Airspace is closed. FAA has banned all U.S. flights due to military activity. Military red alert. Transitioning to guerrilla-style armed struggle. Public safety critical. Widespread blackouts and shelter-in-place orders. The leader captured. Currently the USS Iwo Jima heading for New York. And then Gemini wants to suggest looking at oil markets to see if the world is reacting as much as politicians are. The global reaction to the capture of Nicolas Maduro on Saturday, January 3rd, 2026 is a massive geopolitical plume. While the U.S. celebrates a brilliant operation, the rest of the world is reacting with a mix of shock, celebration, and deep legal concern. The military heat the response. Venezuelan resistance. Defense Minister Vladimir Petrino Lopez has not surrendered. He appeared in military uniform calling the strike criminal aggression and ordered the military to begin a national defense plan. He confirms that U.S. helicopters struck urban areas in Caracas, including the Fort Tiuna military complex. U.S. Navy Presidents Maduro and his wife, Cecilia Flores, are currently aboard the USS Iwo Jima, an amphibious assault ship. Trump shared a photo of Maduro on the ship to Truth Social as proof of capture. The Caribbean front. While there are no confirmed reports of the Venezuelan Navy sinking U.S. ships, the U.S. has effectively blocked the airspace over Venezuela. A NOTAM order as maintaining a heavy naval presence to prevent any counterattacks. The oil shock, the economy. Price spikes. Market experts are predicting a gap up, a sudden jump in the prices of crude oil and silver when markets fully open on Monday. The Trump takeover. Trump has explicitly stated that the U.S. will be very strongly involved in the Venezuelan oil industry, with American oil companies expected to play a major role in running the country for now. PDVSA status. Venezuela's state oil company, PDVSA, claims the refineries are still running, but the port of La Guaira near Caracas has sustained severe damage. The mitigation plume, the neighbors, Colombia's alarm. Colombia sent its armed forces to the border, bracing for a massive influx of refugees. With the power out in southern Caracas and explosions rocking the city, people are fleeing out of fear of full-scale civil war. Brazil's outrage. President Lula da Silva called the capture a serious affront to sovereignty and a violation of international law. The intelligence log. Sector status, current impact. Airspace closed. FAA bans all flights. Caracas is effectively a no-fly zone. Oil uncertain. Prices hovering at $60 a barrel, but expected to surge. UN alarmed. UN calls it dangerous precedent that violates the UN Charter. The streets stagnant. Caracas is eerily quiet. People are sheltering in place. And then I asked for a picture to summarize it, but I think this was supposed to be Cecilia Flores, but Gemini, Nano Banana, mustaches on everybody. But I'm pretty sure it's about, I mean, obviously it's about oil, and then, like, unfortunately, that's how the US economy kind of surges forward, is by doing wars. And Trump was saying that he wants to avoid killing people, but unfortunately we are killing more people. But that's just kind of the process of the military-industrial complex. I'm not trying to make a joke out of all of this, but I hope this helps people understand what's going on. And, like, I don't know if that reduces any anxiety about it, but all I can say is to go vegan, eat healthily, try to avoid the pollution as much as you can, meditate, relax, play music, play video games. And I'm sorry for the bad news. Oh, forgiveness. Forgive everybody. Like, Trump literally wants to try to stop people from dying, and he thinks this will help. But it is a little abusive and illegal, like, according to international law. So it does make the United States look like a bully. So hopefully, I really hope that it was like a play. But yeah, I hope a lot of people weren't killed. Yeah, sorry about it. Have a nice day.